Welcome to the Judgment Free Zone. You've downloaded the Alcohol Free Marriage Podcast, episode 25 for October 3rd, 2022.
Now adjust the volume control so that the sound can be heard in all parts of the room.
Recorded live from the cornfields of Central Illinois, you're listening to the Alcohol Free Marriage Podcast with Matt and Amy. Come and learn and share a journey with two former craft beer enthusiasts who went from daily drinkers to teetotalers and basically never lost their love for their life together.
Hey, a freak show!
Well, hello there, children. Welcome back to your weekly freak show. There's the Alcohol Free Marriage Podcast. I'm Matt, along with the always lovely Coach Amy. How are you, my love?
Well, how are we? I think that should be... You're still clearing your throat.
I'm glad this is a pre-interviewed week because we don't have a lot of energy and voice going on this week.
Yeah.
After a week of illness in the house that I apparently picked up from somewhere and generously shared with you.
Yes, and thank you knocking on this
faux wood,
or plywood probably.
It's real wood. It's just not real good wood.
And yes, thank heavens I did not get it the way you did.
Yeah, it was 3 days of quality bedtime. So
yeah, I had a good solid day and a half. In bed.
Yeah. Although you know what, it's strange. I don't like being sick, but I like the excuses of being sick because it gives me an excuse to do nothing. Like, you know what? I don't feel like doing anything, but I also don't have to do anything. And conversely, I don't mind when you're sick because you can't give me things to do. Like, you're not around. It's like, oh, I can just do whatever I want. Look, I don't have Amy. We should do this. We should do this. What about this? We should do this. Oh, she's sick in bed. I don't have to do anything.
Aren't you lucky?
I know. Sure, you're not sick for like another day, finish out this weekend.
No, I mean, it got me because I will tell you, I've been so stressed. And if you get stressed, chances are, if you are multitasking and trying to do too much, and you've been doing it for an extended period of time, your body is going to shut you down.
Well, that's what I had the week before.
Yeah.
Yep.
And my week was like that earlier.
Well, it also doesn't help that you slept next to me for 3 days. So,
well, I know, but it still goes to that point where if you are overdoing it, because clearly I probably should have not gone to an event on Thursday evening.
Probably not.
Because if I would have stayed home, rested, maybe I could have.
Probably not.
I know. In my mind, it is.
Were you tired? I'm like,
oh my gosh.
If it's like noon and you feel like you need to go to bed, yeah, you probably.
Well, and what's weird is when I got up Friday morning, I felt like fine. I mean, I felt a little tired, but it was like, you went out the evening before.
Partying, drinking it up.
Yeah, as I do with my NA wine. And I had to smuggle in, which I think is so funny now that I used to as a kid or a young adult. Or maybe even not even a young adult, smuggling alcohol into events, and now I'm smuggling NA alcohol.
You didn't really smuggle it, but you brought it, yeah.
It was in my friend's purse, and we took it in. I mean,
it's not like you were taking it. You weren't buying drinks there anyway, so.
And the drinks were free, so it's not like they were losing any money on me not drinking.
No, you weren't drinking their drinks
and that was
anyway.
a very interesting event too. To go and observe. I mean, we went together last year, but our table, as I recall, we were actually sitting by a minister and his wife who actually, he gave the invocation.
And we were also
we were
on
back.
The edge on the back, yeah. So
we were a little bit removed. I was right front and center, and wow. You could hear how loud it was and how much louder it got. And when you're trying to do a presentation, pretty much in the middle of the event, good luck. Because you could the people around got quiet.
Right.
But the people in the outskirts, oh my gosh, it was so hard to get them.
I remember that
to
problem
be quiet.
last year too.
Yeah. But I was very, very much,
You become more observant when you're not drinking at these events.
yeah, but it's I'm so happy that they raised a lot of money, and it's a great cause in our community. So
You're right. And it's homecoming weekend, so we had football and
we did
dances and
we had the
pictures
dance and pictures, and so
all
I
that.
didn't get to go to the football homecoming game, which was I hated
Nope.
that because I love homecoming football games.
You didn't get to go to pictures with your daughter for homecoming? Nope. You missed it all.
No. So, but I'm I'm trying to be positive.
Oh, there you go. Yes.
Okay, well, that means I'm not going to miss senior night.
There you go. See?
Not going to miss senior night. I'm not going to miss the other 2 band competitions that are coming up.
There you go.
So, yes, there's that. And
you got your sickness in, so you're good.
sure, I mean, I haven't been sick for 2.5 years. I never got anything during COVID.
Nope.
Nothing.
And we took COVID. I took COVID test
And
3
I
times.
actually
and it
could
wasn't COVID.
probably say, I mean, I went down, but I didn't go way down. I was like, yeah, I
I know.
still,
You and your protocols.
I did. You know what? Pumping the vitamin C and pumping the zinc.
All right. Well, I'm pumping the pumpkin spice this week is our drink of the week.
Woo-hoo!
Excuse the illness week. I didn't have time to do a lot of planning for drinks and podcast stuff.
So as we said at the end of last week's, we were going to be doing some
mixology with all the bitter. That'll be next week.
That's going to be next weekend because we are actually going to be celebrating our wedding anniversary.
So we'll have dinner and we'll mix up some drinks and we'll try all kinds of stuff. But
yes,
this week was not the week to do this. But I did make homemade pumpkin spice lattes, which, kids, is not that hard.
Oh my gosh.
I'll link to our recipe.
so
You
good.
basically are making a pumpkin pie mix and dumping it in coffee is really all you're doing.
It's like, okay, mix up your pumpkin pie, take a scoop,
And throw in your coffee.
and
That's
stir it
probably
in.
how the
and then
drink came to be.
mix and stir, mix and stir.
Like, this would be really good in coffee. Oh, there you go.
Or no. Stir and drink, stir and drink, stir and drink.
Yeah, I didn't stir mine up quite enough, so when I got to the bottom, it was a little sludgy, but this version 2.0 was
Oh
better.
my goodness. I liked mine, and it wasn't as you told me, it wasn't the good version. And it was still good,
Wasn't as good.
but not as good as what you put together.
And you said you could probably mix up a batch. And do
Yeah,
that.
I think if you mix up a batch and you just had it, you could probably just have it all week.
There you go.
Your little pumpkin spice.
Cheaper than your Starbucks. So,
So good.
all right, Coach Amy. Well, what's our interview this week with Angie? Share with us about Angie.
Well, Angie is somebody that I met through one of my online communities, and so exciting to have her on the podcast. So it's Angie Chaplin, and she is a speaker and a consultant with Mindful Leadership, a business she founded by rediscovering her purpose and aligning her passion in February of 2020 after a decade of life-threatening alcohol use disorder. Angie serves as a member of Smart Recovery's Marketing Communications Committee and group meeting facilitator. And she was selected as a brand ambassador for Athletic Brewing Company. After raising her 2 sons in Northeast Iowa, Angie currently lives in downtown Iowa City, where she practices her values through yoga, networking, community events, and Iowa Hawkeye football. 2 of her boys have been on the team.
Well, awesome.
Yeah, so very excited. And I think next weekend we're going to be able to meet up with her because she is coming over for a football game over in Champaign against the U of I. So
Well, very exciting. Well, in the meantime,
so excited.
let's get to the actual interview right about now.
Hi, everybody. We are here and we are going to be interviewing now Angie Chaplin. And Angie is from Iowa City. And I became affiliated with you through an online group. And it was so exciting. I have actually taken some of your classes that you've done. And then you received an opportunity to be a coordinator, right, of an event at a bar, an alcohol-free bar called Unimpaired.
Yes.
And so this is really exciting to have you here with us today and to talk about that. But before we do that, I wanted to start us off. If you could tell us a little bit about you, where you're from, family, and what you do for fun before we kind of jump into everything.
Yes, absolutely. This is great. Thank you so much for having me. I wonderful opportunity to have a conversation with both of you. My story really begins like many, just as an adult who was trying to cope with some difficult situations. So I wasn't a big drinker in college. It was never something that was pervasive in the family that I grew up in. I got married. I had two young children, went through some, I think, just growing pains in terms of growing into my identity and my roles as a wife, as a mom, and just like a normal couple, we would go out and we'd have drinks with friends, but it was just it was not problematic. And at the time, I started having some anxiety and some depression. And again, the coping skill for me was to turn to alcohol. So my marriage started deteriorating and problems just started kind of escalating. And there was a point in January of 2010 that it was really kind of the perfect storm. I had lost a job, a position that I dearly, dearly loved, that I had worked in leadership development for a nonprofit for 10 years, was eliminated. A very close friend lost her battle with cancer. And there was a situation with my relationship with my husband, and everything just kind of felt like it collapsed. And at that point, my coping skill or my way to escape was alcohol. And that continued. The marriage eventually ended in a very difficult, challenging divorce. The drinking continued to escalate. And for a period of 10 years, I struggled. And it wasn't just, oh my gosh, I'd have too many and I'd wake up the next morning and feeling hungover. I was hospitalized for the first time back in 2018. And that was for acute pancreatitis, which was caused by alcohol, excessive alcohol use. And of course, in those days, it was alcoholism. And it was very much frowned upon in the medical facilities. It was, well, you really need to stop drinking. Here's a pamphlet about AA. And I tried that, and it just wasn't my thing. And so continued to drink, and the depression and the anxiety continued to escalate. There was a suicide attempt that, of course, alcohol was involved, and thankfully survived through that. And just I could never deal with what I needed to deal with. And alcohol was keeping me, what I thought, alive, when in reality it was killing me. And hospitalization after hospitalization, ultimately, the fifth hospitalization was back in February of 2020. And at that time, I was in intensive care for about a week. I remember bits and pieces of it. I remember dark shadows and hallucinations. And at one point, I was strapped to the bed because I became so agitated that I was ripping out the IVs and becoming verbally combatant with the care providers. And what would happen is that not only was it my pancreas, it was also my liver shutting down. I suffered from what is called hyponatremia. So at that point, and I drank wine, and then I thought wine was the problem. So then I would switch to hard liquor. And then I thought, well, the hard liquor is the problem. So I'm just going to switch to beer. And then beer, I would drink so much beer that I was literally diluting my blood. So the sodium levels in my blood became so dangerously low that I would have seizures. And we were able to get my parents were with me. It was Super Bowl Sunday. And my dad took me to the emergency room, and I was immediately admitted. And that's when it became much more serious, and I was put into intensive care. When I got through that, and on the day that I was being discharged from the hospital, a doctor sat down just like they had at every other hospitalization. And I was expecting, the same story. You really need to cut back. Here's a pamphlet for AA, good luck, just stop drinking. Because that's all I had ever heard, the 4 times previous. But this time was different. He looked me in the eye and said, "You've got 2 choices. You keep drinking and you will die." And then he said, "Or you can choose to stop drinking and have a chance at a better life."
Wow.
And it sunk in.
Yeah. So what were your next steps?
My next step, and this is February of 2020.
Yeah.
So this is right before
And
everything that we know to be true about
Very
2020.
convenient for you, right? Yes.
Right. And so I entered an intensive outpatient treatment program
Okay.
that was primarily AA based. They would have speakers come in, and it wasn't, I just knew I needed more than what AA could offer me. I have a higher power. I am a spiritual being, but I truly believed that the alcohol is what buried my power. So I could not grasp my mind, my body, my soul around saying I am powerless. And that's when I said, I need more. So I started Googling and found This Naked Mind and Annie Grace and Laura McCowan and We Are the Luckiest, and really started doing some of my own due diligence and finding what my recovery pathway was going to look like. So I was doing 9 hours of face-to-face counseling, therapy, group work. And then I would go home and I would kind of do my own work on the side. And 40 days later is when COVID hit.
Yeah.
Everything was put on hold.
Oh my gosh. So what did you do next?
At that point, I panicked. I knew that I didn't want to go back to the old ways. I knew I was making a choice to live a better life. But I honestly, I didn't know. Everything that I had built my newfound sobriety on was those meetings, going and talking to people. And then, of course, kind of my side work, which was This
Sure.
Naked Mind and We Are the Luckiest. And I remembered an activity that I had done 15 years prior during graduate school. And it was an activity around values. And I remembered how powerful that activity felt when we had done it in graduate school. And it dawned on me that I wondered if revisiting that experience would have a similar impact on where I was at that time. And so I dug through a box of grad school materials and I found that exercise. So I'm living alone. It's the middle of a pandemic, and I sat down at my kitchen table and I led myself through the very same exercise I had done 15 years ago in graduate school and landed on my 5 core values, which for me are love, growth, connection, gratitude, and well-being. And I knew as long as I lived my life grounded in those values and I made decisions that aligned with those values, that I would keep moving forward. And so it was, okay, what can I do to keep feeling love for myself? And I think honestly, that's the biggest piece that was missing. I was trying to fill myself. I was trying to fill a void, right? Like we talk about in recovery, coaching and support, whatever it is we're trying to fill with alcohol, That's the source we need to lean into. And for me, that void was love.
Oh my goodness. So tell us about love for you, because I know I went to one of your classes on your core values.
Hmm.
So let's talk about love.
Love for myself. I'm 51 years old. And so like many women who kind of were raised in the Midwest, as I was, we were told to put our own needs secondary. That was the thing you did. So my identity had always been wrapped up in being a wife and a mom and an HR director and a leadership development speaker. So I was all tied up into all these identities, right? And so then when my job that I had connected to had suddenly been put aside, I no longer had that identity. When my marriage deteriorated, I no longer had that identity. So all of the things that I felt were feeding me with love were stripped away. And so all of a sudden, all I had was myself. And I had to learn how to love. And it wasn't loving another person, it was about loving the person I was and the person that I saw myself becoming.
That's amazing.
And it's ongoing, right? I mean, that doesn't stop. It's always a state of motion and emotion that we learn to understand that I can't be the best mom. I can't be the best professional. I can't be the best consultant or the best partner if I'm not the best for myself. And that's now what I recognize was the missing piece. You know, there in the time that my marriage was deteriorating, there was emotional abuse, there was narcissistic abuse, all of those things, of course, I didn't recognize until I did my own work and continued to do my own work to really understand that that was trauma.
And when did you get married?
I got married in 1996.
So you were pretty young.
Yes, 26, I guess.
Okay,
26,
yeah.
27. Yeah.
So, because I was married previously and very young and mentally abusive,
Hmm.
and going through that and having somebody take you down mentally.
Yes.
And then as you're going through that, you're young enough that's really forming
Yeah.
who you are.
Yeah.
That's forming all of those, pathways
Yeah.
that we do not love ourselves.
Right.
And all of that, I mean, that's what I'm hearing is that, you self-loathe.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes. It was hearing the words, but also understanding now looking back, being told how unworthy I was and how unlovable I was. So at the same time that those numbing of being unlovable and being unvaluable and being unworthy, I'm cementing those by forming neural pathways that alcohol takes it away. You can escape with alcohol. You won't feel this way when you're drunk enough to not even know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like damage upon damage.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes work every single day, multiple times a day, to continue to build and strengthen those neural pathways. And there's still situations that I find myself reverting to some of that self-hatred.
Mm-hmm.
And that little negative voice that speaks too loudly sometimes, that I have to take a step back and say, no, I'm this is not what's happening right now.
And knowing that, and those automatic negative thoughts,
Yep,
they're not real.
exactly.
They're not true. They're not, those are things that have been said to you.
Yes,
but your ego has latched onto it.
right.
And wants to keep us small and safe.
Yeah.
Even though it's so painful to do that.
Well, we
Yeah.
talk about alcohol all the time as that temporary fix. And it's not even a fix is the problem, right? We think it's a
Yeah.
temporary fix. But at the end of the day, all this work you're talking about that you've done, you're not doing anything. You're not actually moving forward to fix what's wrong. You're just literally drowning it in something else that gets you by
Yeah.
for the next day.
Yep.
But you wake up and not only are you hungover and feel like crap and all that good stuff, but you're still in the same box that you were in before.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
just this evil cycle and you never move.
Right.
But you're an excellent example of like, I mean, some people have differing amounts of work they have to put in, but you're a great example of literally putting in the work and finding what works for you and taking those steps, because that's where the real change comes from, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, I have found that the alcohol or whatever substance or behavior that we find ourselves trying to self-soothe with, that's the symptom. And when we're only trying to manage the symptom, we're ignoring the source. And only when we have the courage to pay attention to the source, that's when we become most powerful in overcoming it.
Yeah. And so you did this work.
I did this work
on your own. You
Yep.
came up with the values. What did you do next with that project as you're going through this? Because you're discovering yourself. You've read This Naked Mind. You're reading Laura McCowan, which,
Yep.
That book. Oh my gosh.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
And there's just so many strong women who have gone through this, smart, and somehow we all end up, not all of us, but there's a lot of us who end up in this scenario. And how
Yeah.
did we get here? But you are digging yourself out of this. You've gone back to this college exercise. So what was the next thing that you did with all of this?
So while I'm listening to This Naked Mind, and I did all the things, right? So it's now quarantine. Everybody's locked in their homes. And one of the things I identified early on was that I needed to turn off the television. I needed to stop watching the news because all it was doing was fueling this already growing sense of negativity that I'm trying to kind of tread water to get through. So I turned off the television. I started listening to podcasts. I started listening to books on Audible. I started practicing mindfulness. So thankfully, not only did I go through grad school, but I was also then invited back as a faculty member. So I knew a lot of academic work that I could tap into. And so I read and I listened and I practiced and I learned, and just my mind, of course. So now I've got alcohol removed, and it was like my brain was this sponge. And the more that I fed it positivity and positive movement, forward motion, then I just kept going, and it just kept growing and growing. And so I was I think I was about 45 days sober when I came out on Facebook and shared my milestone. And it's this huge sense of dread, like, oh my God, what am I doing? But what positioned me to do that was a lot of work with Brene Brown. And what I say with Brene Brown, like she's my BFF, right? I wish, but it was, reading and listening. And I've always been a fan of her around vulnerability. And I thought, I suspect that I am not the only one in the world going through this, even though at the time it certainly felt like I was. And so kind of tiptoeing my way out into the world was sharing my milestone. And like most people experience, the support was overwhelming. And I realize I'm not the only one.
Mhm.
And so that made me more brave. And I started owning more and more of my story, and am now, fully transparent and share pieces, not just through social media, but also as a speaker. As a writer, I've written some articles and sharing the values to vision cards. And it's just letting people know that they aren't alone. And I think it all goes back to, if I have the opportunity to live my alcohol-free life out loud, then other people don't have to suffer in their silence and think that they're alone. And
Yeah.
that's really the motivation.
Absolutely. It's your story, different, but I went in at that same time. Like
Yeah.
I decided that it was time to quit. The week of lockdown.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So you and I are about the same time frame then.
So the week of lockdown, and going, I can't do this anymore. And just being scared to death.
Mm-hmm.
How am I going to do this?
Yeah.
And scared to death because I have to tell him, my drinking buddy. And it was but it was so weird to go into that. But that sponge that you're talking about, you're learning, I probably drove him crazy because I was reading so many books.
You should read that.
I'm like, oh my gosh, let me tell you about this. And I didn't want to overwhelm him either, because he was at the same, wanting to, he was moderating the
Mm-hmm.
time. And I also took on Annie's philosophy of, you could only control you. You cannot change somebody else. So do not sit there and try to go all in and turn everybody off. But letting people know. I mean, I kept pretty silent for a while that I was doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And but it was during that same time. But it was so great because you had that insulation of, I can do this. And I'm like you, I turned off the media. I mean, it was just so negative.
Yeah.
And everything is coming at you. I'm like, what are they going to tell me today?
I know.
It's any different than yesterday.
I know. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So what are your, I know you have two sons. What do they think of all of this?
Oh, wow. It's remarkable. So my oldest son just graduated from college in May. He lives in Des Moines, Iowa, and is working in the digital marketing, digital media space. My youngest son is a junior at the University of Iowa and is a football player for the Hawkeyes. And the effect of my choice to live an alcohol-free life has been the most significant decision I've ever made for my children and our relationship. And they tell me how proud they are. And I can't tell you how deeply that touches my heart and my soul when they tell me that, because they have seen me at my worst. My youngest son is the reason I'm a suicide survivor, because he woke me up. And I often will say that he saved my life, and then he reminds me that I saved my own. And my gosh, you guys.
I'm assuming, as your story tells, had they kind of gotten to the point of maybe wanting you to quit and asking you to quit, but maybe just have written you off, that like, at this point we've tried and mom won't change, so we'll just deal with mom being that way.
Yeah. My oldest son, I asked him this not too long ago. I said, what did you think was going to be the future? And he said, I thought you'd die.
Oh, well, I know that those big guys love you, because you and I are friends on Facebook, and I love seeing the pictures of you and your boys, because they are big football.
They're huge. I know.
Here's this tiny little Angie in between them, and just so it's just, you can tell it's not, it's so authentic.
Thank
The
you.
way they are with you. I can just tell it.
You know, and
Your story resonates with me because the health aspect too of you don't want to die at your own hand, right? It's something
right,
preventable. Like I don't
right,
have to do this to myself, right? It's not a
right.
car accident. It's not some other freak disease. Like you're literally doing this to yourself.
Hmm. Yeah,
And, and your kids see that too.
yeah, yeah. And I've written about my story, or other people have written about my story, and people will ask, when are you writing your book? And the thing is, it is my story, but it's really my family's story, because it's how we dealt with adversity and how we became resilient. I I made the changes, but it didn't just change me. It changed my parents. It changed, of course, my kids. It changed all the future relationships that I now have. Everything about me is driven by authenticity, because I lived my life as a lie for so many years. And now I can put that past behind me. I'll admit sometimes it tries to suck me back, and I'll admit there are times I get stuck there momentarily, but I will pull myself back out. And it's not triggers. People ask, well, do you have cravings to drink? And I don't, but what is a big thing for me are emotional triggers. So if somebody says something, or behaves in a way that kind of takes me back to that past trauma, then I find myself isolating. I find myself kind of shutting down. And I know that that's my own symptom, but I now can recognize that and do something differently. And for me, that means, when I'm feeling the need to isolate, what I need is the opposite. I need connection. I need community. And honestly, that's what brought me. We talked about Unimpaired Dry Bar here in Iowa City. That's what drew me to a place where I can be sober and social at the same time. And that's what Unimpaired offers.
Yeah. Well, tell us about that. Let's, I know that you do coaching,
Hmm.
and we can touch on that too, but let's talk about, well, I don't know. Let's start where the change, you started the change of, you've got your values to vision.
Yep.
You started doing more coaching.
Yep. Yep.
And, so let's talk a little bit about that and where that all went.
And that's my background is in human resources and strategic communication and leadership and organizational development. So I've always had kind of that consultant slash coach mindset and training. And I also like doing events. I mean, that was a big part of the HR world, honestly, because, you have to do these employee events, and then you want to do recruiting events. And so I always had a piece of that. And when I decided that, I'm not done yet. So I'm single, but that doesn't mean I'm alone or lonely. That means that I have to put myself in situations where I'm surrounded by connection, one of my values. And Unimpaired Dry Bar is in downtown Iowa City. Okay. So downtown Iowa City is known to be one of the nation's top party towns, as is the University of Iowa. And so to have an alcohol-free bar and restaurant in downtown Iowa City seems like a misnomer, seems like a person or a place that doesn't belong. But it's a place where I belong. And it's a place where a lot of other people are finding that they belong. And you see them popping up all over the country. My friend Chris Marshall with Sam's Bar, and the
Yes.
events that he has popping up all over the place is just phenomenal. And there's more and more individuals who, like me, want to be sober and social. And being able to coordinate events for Unimpaired, it helps me to kind of tap into that event planning and that community engagement and engagement with the University of Iowa students and bringing in comedians and music acts. And, you know, we have karaoke, we have bingo nights. So on Mondays, I call bingo numbers and we have bingo. So it's just coming up with these events so that it does not become a stagnant environment. And that's really, you know, you need to have that kind of creativity and opportunities, even if you have to create them yourself.
Mhm.
And that's really what the owners and founder of Unimpaired has done, is created it for themselves. And I'm happy to be a part of it.
That is really
That's
exciting.
awesome.
I mean, I wish we had something like that here. It'll be a while. Thinking.
I think Chicago's getting they're
Mhm.
getting a lot more awareness, and I'm seeing a lot more kind of pop-ups and different. I saw a no booze cruise that just happened, I think, over the weekend in Chicago. So yeah, it's just cool seeing all of these things, because it just reinforces the fact that there are other people. You know, the whole world does not revolve around drinking, even though there are still times that, you know, advertising and marketing would help us want to believe that that is the case.
Yeah, it's the only
we
way to
opened our
live.
sixth brewery in town, and we're only in a town of 150,000 people. So
Oh, wow.
that's
Yeah.
a pretty high. We opened up, I'm like, we really need another one? I'm
Right.
like, okay, but you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did get to look. I went out and looked at Unimpaired's drink list.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, wow, I am so impressed. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is, I mean, it is a real alcohol-free bar. I mean,
Absolutely.
Like here,
Alcohol,
well,
yeah.
no, but it has all these different options.
Right.
And from when looking at it, I'm like, oh, this is so cool to go and just to look at it, that it's
Right.
actually an option. Because we've been to different places. We have one brewery here in town that is carrying NA options
Okay.
at the request of Matt. And was
Yep.
like, "You know, I want this experience. I want to come here. This is what I want to do, but give me an option."
Exactly.
And it's funny because they did it first. There's another place that is now carrying, I think, a few, but the one that we would love, still, nope.
And that's what's so silly about it, because it's like you're missing a key demographic that is a source of revenue. So by simply adding this option, you're expanding your
Absolutely.
potential market.
Yeah, and your overhead is very low, right? And you don't
Yeah.
have a spoilage factor, really. You're
Right.
not really adding a lot of things you don't already have. So
Yeah.
it's not terribly difficult. I think it's just kind of your point. It's just getting over this mindset of, well, who wants. I don't do that. Everybody I know drinks. Why would anybody want to come have a non-alcoholic drink? That seems like
Oh,
a waste
yeah.
of time. Why would I even bother investing in that?
Right.
You know?
Right.
So I don't know if you can tell us this, but would there be a possibility that there would be a Sands Bar event maybe sometime?
That would be a great idea. You know, I honestly, I don't know, but I would say, just knowing the excitement that gets built around Sands Bar events and what Chris is doing. I mean, there's also a group out in New York City. You know, they did a pop-up out there that drew a lot of people. I mean, they're just happening all over. You know, I would love to have a sober in Iowa City type of event that is, you know, kind of a mix of entertainment, education. I obviously do a lot of coaching, but I also am blessed to know a lot of other coaches like yourself. And I just think it would be phenomenal to have almost an alcohol-free conference that is celebrating, but also educating, not only about the alcohol-free industry, but helping us educate ourselves about ourselves.
Yeah.
Because there's so much more learning that I need to do and growing and evolving. And I just think, you know, we make it an educational experience at the same time that we're making it an entertainment experience.
Yeah, and it's right in the middle of the country.
It is. I know.
Wow.
Right?
Although it does give me hope because that's a college town in the middle of the
Yeah.
cornfields, and we're a college
Yeah.
town in the middle of cornfields, and
Yeah.
I was kind of like, a college town in the cornfields. There's nothing about that scenario that sounds like you're ever gonna get any things to work, but obviously it's possible, right? You just have to
Well, and I'll
done
tell you
correctly
this.
and done, done right. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes you got to make your own opportunities. So this weekend is our first football game of the season, and I am doing a Sober Hawkeyes tailgate. So I'll be kind of in the mix. I'm hanging out with a bunch of other football parents, but I'll have athletic brewing. I'll have all the things that you need to be fun and have festivities going on and food. You can have an even better time tailgating and enjoying a game day experience without alcohol. And so, yeah, people, I'm going to help spread the word that you don't need an alcohol fueled tailgate. You can have even more fun and enjoy it when it's alcohol free.
Yeah. And make it to the game.
Yeah. And enjoy it. Yeah, exactly. But we do play Illinois.
Oh, how exciting.
At Illinois. It is on my road trip list. So, wink, wink, we'll have to make some plans.
I would love to do that.
Wouldn't that be awesome? I know.
I think that, you know what? Because I've been wanting to meet up with a fellow coach. I mean, everybody else is always showing their pictures.
I know. Yeah, we'll make that happen. I'll have my people call your people.
Excellent. We'll be talking, I guess, a little bit later then.
Yes, for sure.
I can tell you that much.
Well, you know what? I want to ask you too. Besides this part of this movement, what do you get most excited about the Sober Curious movement? I mean, I know we have the Unimpaired, and that's growing, and alcohol-free bars, but what else is exciting you?
It's the newfound freedom. And freedom means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but it's freedom to be comfortable in your own skin. It's freedom to make choices that are aligned with your values. It's freedom to spend the time doing the things that fill you up instead of deplete you. So I think just when I see people share their moments and some of their realities of life on this side of alcohol, and it gives me goosebumps because I know that feeling.
Yeah.
And you know that feeling, and Matt knows that feeling. And it's kind of like those light bulb moments, more and more of them are going off all the time. So the momentum excites me, but the health excites me more. And the fact that we are giving people an option to focus on not only what's best for their health and well-being, but how that has that ripple effect on everyone around them.
Mm-hmm.
And, you think about person by person, how when one person makes a choice to live an alcohol-free life, even if that touches one other person it's just this exponential growth around the country and the world, that there's great power and great potential in that.
And it's exciting because even in our little group that we have, how we know so many people all over the world.
I know.
I mean, our group, I don't even know how many are in our group, but what is it? Around 3,000 people?
Not quite. I think we're at maybe 2,200 people.
Yeah.
But, I know you and I are both in other groups.
Yes.
And where there's, 20, 25, 30,000 people.
Yeah.
Who are at some stage of sober curious or sober serious, or somewhere in between.
Yeah.
But at least they know that that's a realistic possibility.
Yeah. That there's hope.
Exactly.
You're not the only one, and you're not a weirdo.
Yep.
You're not. Oh.
Yeah.
You don't drink?
I
No.
always like being different anyway. So I'm
Yeah,
okay
I
with
mean,
that.
I'm exactly the same, and I own my weirdness. And and I think this goes to your point, Amy. You find out that your weirdness attracts other people and their weirdness, because honestly, we're all weird in our own special ways, right?
Yes.
Yep.
And it's being part of this weird little, not so little tribe
Yeah.
that there are people in my alcohol-free community like you that I've never met in real life.
No.
That are thousands of thousands, half a world away.
Mhm.
And it's like I know those people know me better
Yeah.
than many people I see every single day.
Yeah. And
Because
alcohol kept us, I mean, really
Mhm.
kept us like this.
Right.
And now, I mean, I can't even make my arms, that type of a illustration, because the fact of the matter is we're talking to people on the other side of the world.
Yes, we are.
We have friends who live in Australia. We have friends who live now in Germany. And as somebody said the other day, they're like, you know what? I've only seen you from this far up. I've never seen your legs. Maybe someday I'll get to see your legs, but
this is true. Oh my gosh, that's funny.
And when I heard that, I'm like, oh my gosh, because like last night, I'm talking to you, you're not that far from us.
Right.
But I talked last night to a fellow coach in Australia, and to get together and like, how are you? What's going on?
Yep.
And letting go has opened up so much in my world. I mean, so much more than what I get to do, every day here, which is not a bad thing, but it's just,
broadens your horizons.
It's just huge.
Yes, for sure.
Let's
And you can drop, I've been able to kind of drop that mask, that I wore for 40 years of my life, trying to pretend that I was somebody that I really wasn't. And now it's like, here I am, people, this is what you got. So let's find a way to work it out or not. And that's okay too. But it's just being okay with who each of us really, really are.
Well, Angie, I think this is a good place to wrap it up. This has been.
Got to ask the last big question though.
Yeah. I've just got a few questions left.
Okay.
But first, the big question that we ask everybody is, what's your favorite alcohol-free drink?
Well, there's two. So when I'm tailgating, I will do Athletic Brewing beer, which for me, my favorite is Athletic Light. So there's that. On the mixed drink side, I really like Ritual Tequila, which to me has that same kind of edginess.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like a Paloma, which is kind of a fruitier version of a margarita. And that would be my go-to kind of mocktail, would be a Paloma with alcohol-free spirits.
Right.
Two solid choices.
So okay, where can listeners find you? Let's just where can they find out more about you, more about Unimpaired?
Unimpaired. The best place would be on social media. So on Facebook, it would just be looking for Unimpaired Iowa City. Same thing with Instagram. For me personally, I'm pretty easy to find on whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I don't do TikTok. I don't really do Snapchat, but more of the old school social media. And then my website is angiechaplin.com, where people can kind of see a little bit more about what I do with the Mindful Leadership, which is my actual business consulting group or services. And then doing, of course, the events work with Unimpaired. And a lot of sober and social experiences yet to come.
Awesome. That is so awesome. Thank you so much for being
on with us.
Oh, thank you, Angie, for that interview. That was awesome. You are my spirit animal. I have a lot in common with you and your story. Amy, though, we have a couple more things you want to share here for October as we get started?
I did. First off, it's Sober October. If you need a little support, if you're taking a break, reach out to me at amy@joyontheotherside.com. And also remember, we do have our 5 o'clock somewhere alcohol-free edition. That's out there. You can go to my website. You can sign up for that at joyontheotherside.com. But I wanted to mention Breast Cancer Awareness Month is also this month. We are going to be having an interview with a breast cancer survivor in a couple of weeks. But I did want to point out just a couple of things. Women who have 3 alcoholic drinks per week have a 15% higher risk of breast cancer. The risk of breast cancer increases 10% for each additional drink a woman regularly has. So if you're at a baseline and you increase that, you are increasing your chances by 10%. 70% of all Americans don't know the links between alcohol and cancer. So I just wanted to put that out there, that alcohol is a carcinogen, a class 1.
It is.
Just like smoking.
It's a first class, baby, but not in the good way.
First class, not in a good way. Yeah, so that's what I have for that. And
there you go. Welcome to Sober October. We only get sober in months that rhyme, so. That's what I say.
that is true.
That is true. All right, children. Well, thank you for joining us here on, what is this? Sorry. I'm sick, whatever. You know what? Thanks for joining us on the podcast. Hope you enjoyed our interview with Angie. We'll be back next week, hopefully a little less clear-headed and anniversary time. And we will get to all the bitter. Don't you worry.
Can't wait.
We're going to be that brand ambassador for them just yet. So, all right, kids, wishing you peace and love from the cornfields. I am Matt, along with the always lovely Coach Amy, and we are out.